Hello and welcome to episode 3 of the After Effects crash course. In this episode, I'll cover how to apply and customize effects in After Effects. As always, the video will be broken into chapters so you can skip around as needed. First, let's quickly look at how to apply an effect to a layer. For this demonstration, I'll use the same composition as the last video. To apply an effect, open the Effects and Presets panel and search for the effect you want. Right now, I'll look for the fill effect, because it's easy to understand. Click on the effect and drag it to the layer you want to apply it to. You can customize the effect in the Effect Controls panel. Select the layer and its properties will show up in this panel. For the fill effect, you can change the color of the entire layer. Click on the colored box to bring up a menu where you can select any color. You can also use the eyedropper icon to select an existing color on your screen. Check the invert box to make the effect affect everything outside of the layer's area. You can also adjust the opacity for the effect. I've shown you previously how to use the transform controls to affect a layer. However, the transform properties can also be applied as an effect. Search for the transform effect and apply it to a layer. Here you have all of the same properties for position, scale, anchor point, rotation, and opacity, in addition to a few extra options. You can use skew and skew axis to simulate 3D perspective in 2D. Additionally, the transform effect allows you to set a different shutter angle than what you set for the entire composition. Just uncheck the Use Compositions Shutter Angle box and change it to whatever you like. You can layer multiple instances of the transform effect on top of each other, and they will function independently of one another. For the purposes of this video, I'll take you through just a few different effects that you might use frequently, but the best way to become familiar with all of the different effects that After Effects has to offer is to explore it for yourself. First, let's look at the glow effect. The three main properties to look at here are threshold, radius, and intensity. If I apply it to this lightsaber here, you can see exactly what's going on. First, I'll increase the radius, which is the size of the glow. Now I'll increase the intensity. Now you can see exactly what happens when I change the radius. The threshold just changes how much of the layer is affected by the glow. To better demonstrate this, I'll bring in some video footage and apply the glow effect. I'll increase the radius and lower the intensity, and you can see that it creates an almost dreamlike effect. Now if I adjust the threshold, you can see that a lower threshold means the glow will cover more of the image, while a higher threshold restricts the glow to only the brighter areas. One useful category of effects is blur. There are many different blur effects, but I'll focus on the ones that I think are the most useful: fast box blur and camera lens blur. Fast box blur is best for quick results. As its name suggests, it works quickly and is able to play back easily. It has two main settings. Blur radius controls how strong the blur effect is, while iterations controls how many times the effect is applied. You can make the blur directional by changing blur dimensions, and you can see what repeat edge pixels does by checking it on or off. Now let's look at camera lens blur. Overall, this effect gives you much more room for customization. You can use the iris properties to customize the appearance of the blur, and it simply produces much more realistic and visually appealing blur. The drawback, however, is performance. My computer seriously struggles to play back 4K footage with camera lens blur applied, but has no problem with fast box blur. In short, use box blur when you need quick render times, and camera lens blur when you need the best looking results possible. The next effect is tint. With default settings, tint will convert any layer to black and white. However, you can customize the effect in a few ways. The Map Black and White to controls will push the darker and brighter parts respectively of the image toward any color you choose. For example, I can push the shadows toward purple and the highlights toward orange. Now I can adjust the amount of tint to further customize the look. One effect that can be useful in graphic design is drop shadow, which Photoshop users will likely be familiar with. It creates a shadow behind a layer to give the illusion of 3D space and separation. You can change the color, opacity, direction, distance, and softness of the shadow. After Effects has several effects for color correcting footage. I'll show you some of the more useful ones, starting with brightness and contrast, which does exactly what it sounds like. One slider for brightness and one slider for contrast. Next, we have hue and saturation, which lets you offset the colors of the entire image. You can adjust saturation and lightness as needed. Check Colorize to tint the entire layer a single color, which enables a new set of controls for hue, saturation, and lightness. Additionally, you can use hue and saturation to adjust individual colors. For example, I can select greens in this drop-down and change the properties for only the green channel. You can refine your color selection here. The curves effect is a different way to apply contrast to your footage. Instead of a single slider, curves gives you a graph of input versus output brightness. That means that if I make a point on the curve here and drag it down, I'm making the dark parts of the image even darker. Conversely, if I make a point up here and drag it up, I'm making the bright parts brighter. You can make these adjustments in each individual color channel for even more control. For the last chapter of this video, I want to quickly show all of you a free plugin for After Effects called FXConsole. It was created by Andrew Kramer and his team at Video Copilot, and it makes it easier to quickly search for and apply effects. You can download FXConsole from the link in the video description. After you install it, you can activate it by selecting a layer and pressing Ctrl Spacebar. This brings up a search menu where you can type the name of the effect you're looking for, then press Enter, and the effect will apply to the selected layer. It's a small thing, but a huge time saver in the long run. That's all for this episode. In the next and final episode of this course, I'll cover some more advanced animation techniques including parenting, using the graph editor, and motion tracking. I'll see you all then.